Have you ever wondered if you had a dark side? It sounds like the beginning of a horror movie, doesn't it? And there is certainly a lot of spiritual references to shadow work online. However, there is nothing otherworldly about it. And in this video, I'm going to help you understand what it is and how it can help to transform your life in incredible ways, especially in midlife after divorce. If we haven't met before, I'm Sarah and I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and a women's empowerment coach. I help women get their incredible transformations after divorce in midlife, and I help teach my clients all the wisdom I gained when I got my super fast transformation after divorcing an A-grade narcissist psychopath and creating a fabulous life. So maybe like me, you've been hit by the emotional tsunami of realising your marriage was a total train wreck. If you also discovered you were attached to a narcissist, then this will feel magnified 100 times over. And this was my story. And it was so horrific that I never wanted to experience life with another narcissist ever again. Yet, I still wanted to live a lovely life and be happy and attract great people. And I just didn't know how. But I found out. And as it turned out, the methods I used to get free from toxic relationship patterns were the most effective ways to heal in super quick time. And I want to share with you today the concepts of inner work and shadow work, which is how I created the biggest breakthroughs and transformations, both for me and for my clients. Understanding the needs of a human being is essential to know how to make a start on our inner work and healing journey. So to help us looking at the hierarchy of needs pyramid, you can see that there are needs that have to be met for survival purposes and needs that help us thrive. So looking at this pyramid, so it's a little bit, this is the teacher in me. Need a proper whiteboard, but we'll have to make do with this for now. So the hierarchy of needs is thanks to Maslow, and this is sort of my interpretation of it. So we can see that this pyramid represents the whole person. This is a holistic model, and that the needs there are basic needs, survival needs here, safety and physical needs, that's warmth, clothing, safety, feeling safe are basic survival needs that everybody has to have to begin to even start living. So there's sort of survival needs. But as we grow up the pyramid, a few things become a little bit more evident. So we've got here love and belonging. Now, some people argue that love and belonging is something that people need. It's a basic need. It's even more basic than safety and physical needs. For example, a baby must have connection to its caregivers if it is to have its needs, physical needs met and needs of safety met. So there is some debate around this, so I will put all of these in a similar category. And so human needs at a very basic level for survival are these needs here. But we want to do more than survive in life. We want to thrive. So what does life look like for someone who's thriving? Well, this pyramid gives us a little bit of a clue. So we've got the next level up is esteem. So how a person holds themselves. How do they value themselves? And I'm not talking in a narcissistic way. If we think of babies when they are first born, they have very high levels of self-esteem. They expect their needs to be met. They know they are lovable, and they know that they are important. But for some of us, during childhood, we lost a connection with this, and our self-esteem dropped, and we didn't feel we could have our needs met. So this is where things start to go a little bit wrong. But anyway, going on to the perfect level, the perfect thriving life. So people will have a high level of self-esteem. They know that they deserve to have their needs met. And then at the top of the pyramid, we have this phrase, self-actualization. And this is the realm of being connected to the world, being connected to the universe, to a higher power. And you might even call it enlightenment. I know one of my favourite teachers was Thich Nhat Hanh, and he explained enlightenment perfectly. He said it's when the little wave knows she's part of the ocean, and this connectedness to all things is enlightenment or self-actualization, that we are the universe expressing. We are part of the earth, we're connected to everything on the earth and above. So this method, so it's really important to understand this before we go into shadow work. So now moving on to Carl Jung. Jung was a contemporary of Freud, and he studied personality and how it was created from conscious and unconscious life experiences. And we're going to use some of his modelling, some of his understanding to explain how shadows or parts of ourself are located in our mind. So it begins with understanding that our mind is like a supercomputer where all our programs have been installed. And our programs are installed into our mind before the age of 7. So every idea that we've ever had about anything, relationships, money, life, everything was created, those programs were created in childhood. And if you look at the diagram here, this is meant to be an iceberg, and the iceberg is a representative, and we know that icebergs, there is much more below the surface as there is on top, and this is a little bit of a description of our mind. So our mind is a collection of all the programs that we have on board that control our physical processes as well as our mental and thinking processes and beliefs. And 10% is above the iceberg is what we're aware of. So these are the things that we know about, that we have control over. So this part of our mind is the one who decides what's going to be in our weekly shop, what is going to be on our meal plan, how we are going to plan our time, that sort of thing, our executive mind. But autopilot is that's our subconscious. So 10% is our conscious awareness and 10% is subconscious. So this is what's going on, that's still running. The programs are still running, they're still active, but they're on autopilot, which means we aren't consciously thinking about them. So an analogy of this might be, or an example of this might be when you are driving. So when you first started learning to drive, you were having to think about everything all the time, but as you became more experienced, your driving skills went into autopilot, and you can now drive at a level where you're a safe driver and you're doing all of these things automatically without thinking, like changing gear, responding to hazards, and it's almost like automatic, and it doesn't require the same level of thinking that you had when you were a learner. And also, autopilot is where the programs are held that control our physical processes within our body. So breathing, we don't think about breathing, it just happens. We don't think about our heart beating and keeping the blood flow going through our body, it just happens. So these are processes and programs that are running to keep our body working, and we're not even thinking about them. And so understanding the conscious and the subconscious mind is really important for doing your shadow work. And I'm just going to move to this part here. So this is kind of like a version of the iceberg. This still represents our mind. So I've kind of gone back to the pyramid diagram. And here is the top 10%. So this is the 10% of conscious awareness. So this is what we know, who we know we are. So it's your identity that you know about. Okay, so you know you're a mum, you know that you know your job, you know all the details of your identity as far as it goes in this 10%. But there is 90% that's unconscious to us. And these little stick men represent core identities. So up here we've got our core identities that we definitely know about, like I'm a mum, I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, I'm a therapist, or blah blah blah. All of these things that you know about, they represent you. But there are things in our unconscious that we are not aware of that still exist, and each of these little people, these little stick people, represent programs that are running our inner identities. And these are the parts of us, our little beliefs that we developed when we were a child to help us to connect to people. And to connect to people in our tribe, in our family, our caregivers. And they contain information of beliefs that we created in response to often difficult circumstances. So this is why the shadow aspect comes in. So we're aware of these, there are lights shining on these are things we know about. These are in the shadow, and these are identities that we don't have any awareness of. So shadow work is about raising awareness of these inner core identities that we don't have any awareness of, but they are running, just like the programs that run our body. These programs are running our mind. And what we are thinking about on the inside, we create on the outside as our reality. So, for example, I knew I got some really faulty programming going on here because my repeated experience of a difficult relationship with a narcissist was a repeating pattern. And that's how I knew there was something going on here that I didn't know. I didn't know myself enough. And I needed to raise my awareness of what was going on so that I could change my programming. So I knew I'd got faulty programs. It's a bit like a computer, isn't it? You have a faulty program in your computer that slows your computer down, and when you go in and find it, you realise it's really old, it's not compatible with your new processor, and you have to upgrade it. And that's basically what these little programs are, these little identities here. So I've also put other terms. So these programs, I call them parts. They're kind of like parts of self. Some people call them shadows. Some people call them parts of self. Some people call them inner identities. Some people refer to shadow work and inner work as inner child work. And in my experience, I've been working with inner child identities. So when I talk about inner child, I've just not got one whole child. There's lots of little identities that make up who I am, and we're all like this, and they're kind of parts of us that have just split off from our main known identity because there's some issue, we have some issue with them. They come from a suppressed feeling that we weren't allowed to feel at the time, so we sort of buried them, and they've gone into our unconscious awareness or unconsciousness, so we're not aware of them. And these little parts kind of like break off identities. Fragmentation is, I think, how Teal Swan describes it. If you want to go a little bit deeper into shadow work, then I highly recommend Teal Swan's videos on this, and also her books are great as well. Definitely check them out, and she's got quite a lot of work, quite a body of work relating to this topic. So what we're trying to do is develop greater awareness of everything that's going on for us. So how do we recognise our shadows? If they're unconscious, if they're in our subconscious mind, how do we get to know about them? How do we get to understand them? And this was something I had to find out. As I mentioned before, I had some really faulty programming relating to relationships, and I knew that because of what was showing up in my life, and it was a repeated pattern. And this is one thing that there are three things. I'll just go through them now. Repeated patterns, behaviours. I'm just going to the bottom of my list here. So any repeated cycles of disappointing, unwanted cycles where the same thing keeps happening over and over again. So it might be, disappointing relationship patterns on repeat. It might be a feeling of discontent about the world, and things keep showing up for you that match that belief. So things like procrastination, feeling victimized is a big one, especially if you've attracted narcissistic people into your life. So things like anxiety and ruminating thoughts. So any repeated cycles are going on repeat to bring you into awareness about them. So what's is at the basis of a repeated cycle, of a repeated pattern, is a belief, and that belief is held by a part of you in your subconscious that is driving that. So even though they're in your subconscious, they're still very powerful beliefs, even though you're not aware of them. So you have to be able to find what the belief is that's driving these behaviours. And there are ways of doing it, so hopefully you'll have a bit more information at the end of this video. So other things, so it's like, well, what else? Okay, repeating patterns. So how else can I find out what my shadows are, what my parts are? Another really, it's obvious to me, but it wasn't when I learnt this, that your emotional triggers, your hot buttons, are indicators of a shadow part of you. There is something that, and it's usually some kind of childhood wounding, that you haven't healed that wound that occurred, an emotional wound, a psychological wound that occurred in childhood. It's still active in your subconscious, and something happens that triggers you. That is absolutely key to finding and locating that shadow program, and it's a wound that needs healing. And a lot of people say, shadows, they're bad. They're not bad. All of those little people in the pyramid, those little parts of self trying to help you out, but they were helping you out when you were a helpless child. As we're grown up now, we have to upgrade our programs because they just don't work anymore. So another thing that can, it's just one thing before I move off emotional triggers. So emotional triggers are anything that suddenly take you by surprise. Maybe you feel a sudden outrage at something, and they're quite sudden, but you'll feel them in your body first. So there is a mind-body connection with your triggers. So your body is working in sympathy with that part of you, that wounded little self, and it's there to help. So your feelings, your triggers are there to help you locate these old defunct programs. So emotional triggers, don't ever try and cover them up, because they're giving you a sign to heal. Another way is, so we've got emotional triggers, we've got repeated behaviours. The other thing is any projections. So projection is basically, it's a judgment. So where you judge somebody and you go, oh, look at her over there, how can she do that? Any kind of judgment that you make on another person is actually a projection. And what I mean by that is that you are judging somebody by, I don't know, by, oh, look at her, it's quite often it's to do with money, isn't it, and that sort of thing. So you might be judging somebody by their lifestyle choice, and it might not be something that you agree with, so you judge them. You're quite harsh with your judgment, but that's a projection, and it's a projection because what you are doing is you are judging yourself. So you may have heard, when you point a finger at somebody, there are 3 more pointing back at you. So whatever you judge, you are also judging in yourself, and you're trying to disown something that you've seen, that you're reacting with, is something that you hold within yourself. And this is very tough to get, because I was very judgmental before I started doing this work, and I kind of grew up with that in my background, understandably, because it was highly narcissistic everywhere. And it's a very unconscious behaviour, but basically what you judge, you actually have some identity with, but it's an identity that you disagreed with and you're trying to push down. So those little stick men in your subconscious mind, those identities, you're trying to disown them. You're trying to say, no, I don't want that in me. So be very careful about your projections. Take notice of them. Anything that you judge is you judging yourself. It's a clue that you have an old wounded program. It probably needs an upgrade. That there's something there in your subconscious that needs attending to. So hopefully this helps. When I upgraded my programs from unhappy relationship programs and coding to happy relationships, my world changed beyond all recognition. I had been running unhelpful programs for years and not even realised, till things got so bad I couldn't ignore them anymore. And this is something I help my clients with. So we go in and we find where these old programs about relationships are running the show. They literally are running your life experience, and we just upgrade them to better, healthier beliefs. And if we try and effort over old programming, we're going to end in failure, because they might be subconscious, but they are absolutely running the show. They are running your life. They're very much active. But at the same time, we have to upgrade them. And how we do that is to access our subconscious, we have to go into the mind state in which they were created. Now, children create beliefs, and they're very much in sort of alpha brainwave state and theta brainwave state. We know that children are like sponges, especially under the age of 7 or below the age of 7. They accept everything they see, they soak everything up, all of life experiences, and make beliefs. And they're automatically living in this sort of alpha brainwave state. So we can't, a normal waking awareness is, I think it's beta brainwave. So we can't access our subconscious mind with our normal thinking mind, with our problem solving mind. We have to go into an altered mind state. So which is where hypnosis comes in, because hypnosis, whether it's with a therapist or self-hypnosis, is how you access your subconscious mind. So it becomes a very valuable tool for locating and finding the old programs and then upgrading them. So that's all from me today. I hope you found the content useful. Please do like and subscribe to the channel to be notified of more content like this, and I'd love to see you in the next video.